Hello katoa Talk. This is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. Me and Emblemi Koroi Hawkins. Coming up, Pacific leaders congratulate Donald Trump and commit to working with his incoming administration. Also,
there can be a barrier potentially about language, cultural competency in services.
Pacific Mental Health and Addiction Service opens in Christchurch, and later on Tonga are hoping to repeat their 2019 heroics when they meet Australia in the final of the Pacific Rugby League Championship on Sunday. The Prime Ministers of Tonga, Fiji and Solomon Islands have congratulated Donald Trump, the incoming President of the United States. As Pacific leaders react to the news, women living in the U.S. territory of Guam have expressed concerns about what it means for their reproductive rights, and academics have also weighed in on the pros and cons of a Trump presidency, as Elisha Foon reports.
A landslide victory for Donald Trump.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness.
Back for a second term, Mr. Trump has taken the popular vote, Congress and Senate, as Kamala Harris conceded defeat, promising a peaceful handover.
A fundamental principle of American democracy is that when we lose an election, we accept the results. That principle, as much as any other, distinguishes democracy from monarchy or tyranny, and anyone who seeks the public trust must honor it.
Tonga and Solomon Islands Prime Ministers have congratulated the President-elect, saying they look forward to strengthening bilateral ties. Fiji's Prime Minister Sitiveni Rabuka says it's his sincere hope and prayer that Mr. Trump's tenure in office will be marked by peace, unity, progress and prosperity for all Americans and the community of nations. Fijian academic Vijay Naidu says on one hand that Mr. Trump's tariffs could cost the region.
And although our trade with the US is not massive, it'll be worrying if some of the things that we export to the USA cover fresh fruits and vegetables and some, fish products. That would be worrying for us.
Mr. Trump also believes climate change is a hoax.
Trump, in his previous term as president, he basically did not support any of the initiatives relating to climate change. So that would be bothersome for Fiji and the rest of the Pacific.
On the other hand, he says Mr. Trump's ambition to end wars and ease tensions in the Pacific would be beneficial for world peace.
The war in Ukraine and the Israeli invasion of Gaza and Lebanon, this costs the American taxpayers. But also the heightened U.S. involvement in Southeast Asia and in South China Seas ameliorate the tensions and even end the wars. That'd be a great improvement to the world as a whole and to our part of the globe.
Women in Guam have shared concerns over how the results will impact their reproductive rights.
I'm terrified for the millions of women who had hope, but now may be losing it or have lost it.
I'm just flabbergasted that a majority of America would choose somebody like that to represent us. It's just humiliating to be an American right now.
People are fighting for women's rights, but Trump, the president, can't do anything about it. That was a federal issue from last year. It's up to the state.
The top supplier of abortion pills by mail in the United States was inundated with thousands of requests following the election in anticipation of strict abortion bans across the states. Mr. Trump has previously stated there should be punishment for women who have abortions and says it should be up to individual states to decide. While there are no abortion providers on Guam, Director of Guam Bureau of Women's Affairs, Jane Flores, says women need to be supported.
We need to protect women's reproductive rights because we're seeing around the country where restrictions have caused women to either die or either have negative health outcomes because of lack of access to this kind of care. So we really need to keep the fight going.
Massey University Associate Professor for the Centre of Defence and Security, Anna Poles. says the Trump presidency brings uncertainty to the Pacific region, but she says one possible benefit could be his friendship with billionaire tech mogul Elon Musk.
His very close relationship could be potentially beneficial in terms of adding some depth to the telecommunications sector in the region, and Musk's SpaceX and Starlink provided emergency satellite internet terminals to Tonga following the February 2022 eruption and tsunami.
Donald Trump becomes the first president to take office while several criminal cases against him are pending. He will be sworn in on Inauguration Day, on January 20th next year.
Samoans who would be entitled to have New Zealand citizenship restored under a new bill will have their citizenship application fee reimbursed if they are successful, but they will still have to initially pay to apply. Green Party MP Tiano Tuiono put forward 2 amendments to his bill to extend those eligible for citizenship to some of the main group's descendants and for the citizenship application to be free of charge, but these were shot down. I spoke with Tiano Tuiono shortly after the bill went through the committee of the whole House.
I had 2 amendments that I put up. They were to support what we were pushing for at the Select Committee, and that was to widen the scope to descendants, in this case born before 1962, which is around about 19,000 people. And if you look at the direct children of the original cohort of the people impacted by the 1982 legislation, that's around about 15,000. So that's what we said we would do, because that's what we heard from the community. The other thing that I wanted was for it to be no costs for people as well. Both of those amendments weren't supported around the House. Labour Party and Te Party Māori supported them, but none of the other government parties, so they were unsuccessful. So the bill, we had it at the second reading, is what went forward. There was an amendment that came forward from Andy Foster from New Zealand First, which was essentially that if people apply and they are successful, then they could get a refund, which is something the whole House supported, including myself, given that my amendment wasn't supported.
That's not a bad trade-off in terms of that Second Amendment.
No, it's not a bad trade-off. The way I kind of looked at it was, I'm here to advocate for the community and do my best, and that's what my amendments were about. Because there was a bit of time and there had been discussion, and I know that community had been in discussion with different political parties about their concerns to see if government parties in particular would move. But that wasn't the case as well. But I did make the point in my contributions, and others did as well, around things that the community brought up outside of the scope of the bill. So the scope of the bill was really focused around the Citizenship Act 1977 and the 1982 Western Samoan Citizenship Act. So it's a very narrow scope of legislation that we were dealing with. And there are other concerns outside, like frustration with visa settings, frustration with the quota system, all of those sorts of things. And those are the things that we highlighted as well, the push for the original cohort to be able to get their superannuation and pension, or at least have some clarity about how they would qualify for that as well. Because the way that works is if you have to have 10 years of lived in New Zealand after the age of 20, at least 5 of those years after you're 50. And I know people would have been back and forth for a while, so some people were already qualified, but there were the people that thought that there should be a way for first of all to be clarity, but for them to also qualify as well. But that stuff falls outside of the scope of the bill, and so it might appeal to all political parties around the House, particularly the government parties, is to find a way to make those things happen.
Next steps, third reading, has that been scheduled yet?
Third reading, it hasn't been scheduled yet. I've just got to check the calendar to see when the next members' days are. So I think there should be one in December. I haven't confirmed that yet.
Pacific Mental Health and Addiction Service Mapu Maya has opened its first South Island branch in Christchurch. Health experts say tailored mental health services run by people who mirror those accessing the services is crucially important. And with nearly 41,000 or 9% of New Zealand's Pasifika population living in the South Island, Mapu Maya believes there's a demand for the services it has to offer. Caleb Fotheringham reports.
We all have our vices, right? I would think mine might be a little easier.
The official opening of Pacific Counselling Service Mapumaya, backed by Christchurch's Pacific community. Mental Health Minister Matt Ducey says making mental health services more accessible often means breaking down barriers of stigma and discrimination, something he says locally run services are very good at.
Quite often there can be a barrier, potentially about language, cultural competency in services, and so by working with services like Mapumaya, they know their community, they know them quite often personally, individually, and they can work with them.
Mr. Ducey says the feedback has been that mental health and addiction services are hard to access and are fragmented, but the government wants to provide guaranteed access which is tailored to the community and has a workforce that represents the country's diversity.
When you look at the percentage of Pacifica in different parts of New Zealand, that will be at varying degrees, and we just need to make sure that that is matched up. And how we do that is by understanding potentially what are some of the perceived and real blocks for people coming forward to do some of these roles.
Mapumaya Chief Executive Tuala Pisio Ahoni says the name of the Christchurch branch explains exactly what they're all about. Mapu meaning to rest and Maya meaning to come.
To call people into our space, into our whale, into our home, to say, come out of the hot sun, come and take a load off, have a rest, have a drink of water.
The Pacific population in the South Island has almost doubled to nearly 41,000 in the past decade, with growing numbers in Oamaru, Nelson and Marlborough. Tuala says given those statistics, there needs to be more of a focus on the South Island.
We have the RSC workers and working in the Nelson area, so we're seeing anecdotally quite a number of our Pacifica living out in these regions and growing, and we're getting a lot of requests for help.
Tuala says one barrier is a lack of awareness around mental distress amongst Pacifica.
Our culture itself leans towards praying will help you, just, suck it up, you'll be okay, carry on and be strong, you're the man.
But she says once mental stress is acknowledged, the next step is to remove the shame for those needing help. Research and Workforce Development Manager for Mapumaya, Philip Siatanga, who is based in the new Christchurch building, says the workforce is passionate but under-resourced.
The need is huge, particularly the clinical workforce. We only have a handful of people in Christchurch and around the country.
Mr. Siatanga says the idea of culturally competent mental services has only been around for the past 15 years, but he can't overstate how important it is.
On a scale of importance, it's ginormous. It's not that mainstream services can't, it's just that we're better at it, I have to say, for our people. Around engagement, around familiarity, around language, cultural nuance.
Mr. Siatanga says despite the challenges of a stretched workforce, the organisation is seeing positive outcomes and looks forward to continuing success for the South Island branch in the coming years.
In rugby league, Tonga are hoping to repeat their 2019 heroics when they meet Australia in Sydney on Sunday in the final of the Pacific Championship. Securing a victory will be no easy feat, with the Kangaroos having beaten them 18-0 in the group stage. Tonga has played Australia 3 times and won once on that memorable night at Eden Park 5 years ago. But if their sea of red fans can inspire them to pull off the improbable, they would go into the history books as the first Pacific team to win a major international rugby league title. The CommBank Stadium is sold out for the test, with a host of other fixtures including the Women's Trans-Tasman Final and places in the 2025 Pacific Cup up for grabs, with promotion-relegation matchups between the PNG Orchids and Fetu Samoa and the Kiwis taking on the PNG Kumals. RNZ Pacific senior sports journalist Eliasa Tora joins me to talk expectations and team build-ups.
A lot of excitement already in the air in Sydney as both Tonga 13 and the Kangaroos wrap up their preparations for Sunday's big clash. The Sea of Red have already overtaken Sydney as Tongan fans come in to back their side, affectionately known as Mate Maa Tonga, and the sold-out tickets at the CommBank Stadium already indicates that it's going to be a cracker of a game. Jason Taumalolo told the media in Australia the Tongans are not afraid of anyone, irrespective of their standing on the world rankings, whether it's the Australians or the Kiwis, and they are all set to go out and play for their fans and their families. Mal Meninga has made just 2 changes to his starting lineup, with Canberra's Hudson Young coming in for Cameron Murray, who was injured, and Panthers' Lindsay Smith joins the bench for his Test debut. So 2 debuts for Kangaroos players, Tonga retaining their 17. It's going to be a cracker of a game, and a lot of excitement already out there in Sydney.
This year, Kangaroos proving really dominant. They beat Tonga 18-0. They beat the Kiwis as well, coming through the groups into the final. What do Tonga have to do different in this final if they hope to make right history?
I think it's going to be a lot on consistency, on how they take their options on the field. The Kangaroos are world champions. They are professionals, and they know how to take the pressure and respond. Against the Kiwis, Tonga went up 24-6 at halftime. They lost that lead, and the Kiwis came back in. They cannot afford to do that against the Kangaroos. If they want to win and create history by becoming the first Pacific team to win a major international rugby league title, they will have to be on the go 80 minutes, take the opportunities, score, and defend well against the Kangaroos.
Now, it's another Trans-Tasman matchup in the women's final, but for other Pacific teams playing, PNG Kumals get their chance to secure promotion for the Pacific Cup next year when they face the Kiwis in the new promotion relegation series. How do you see that game going?
Yes, the Kumals are on a high. They've defeated the Fiji Bati and the Cook Islands in the Pacific Bowls Championship. They did well against both teams, although they felt that they had let off early in the stages against the Cook Islands. But against the Kiwis, who have not won any out of the 2 games they've had so far this year, it's going to be interesting. If the Kumals can keep up the pace and be consistent also, make use of the chances they have, they should be able to do well against the Kiwis. But the Kiwis, on the other hand, are going to be farewelling veteran Sean Johnson, who says this is going to be his last game, and I'm sure the Kiwis will want to send him off on a high note.
Fetu Samoa also has the chance to win a spot in the Women's Pacific Cup, already qualifying for the World Cup, coming in on a high. They're facing the PNG Orchids for the decider. What does Samoa need to do to beat the Orchids, who will also be fighting to keep their place in the top ranks?
Yeah, the Orchids have had the experience of playing in the Pacific Cup in the last 2 years. Fetu Samoa, obviously the champion side out of the Pacific Bowls. And they will be out there trying to get into the Pacific Cup next year. Against Fiji last week, they came back into the game late in the second half, and they took control. They showed a lot of stamina, a lot of power. They had a lot of experience up front because of their rugby league ladies who've been competing in the National Rugby League women's competition in the last 2 years, and they played it very close. And if they do that against the Orchids, I'm sure they will be able to get there in the end. But then again, as I said, the Orchids have played in the Pacific Cup in the last 2 years. They also have some experienced players in the side. It's going to be a tit-for-tat game, I believe, and whoever is consistent and remaining in there until the end of the 80 minutes will take that game.
That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, Tofa Soifua.